One thing that's inevitable about grad school is that you will be expected to do a lot of readings. So today we are discussing, are grad readings hard, and the differences between doing readings in graduate school and readings in undergrad. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about everything grad life, grad advice, and research. And today we are discussing, are grad readings hard, and ways that readings in graduate school are different than readings in undergrad. And the first question, are grad readings hard, takes a little bit of teasing out to be able to answer. I've said this in a lot of my videos, that grad school isn't necessarily harder than undergrad, it's just completely different. And so to really get to the crux, to help you understand if grad readings are going to be hard for you, we need to really unpack and discuss the major differences. So first, I think it's important to say that they are in fact the same. And what I mean by that is, in undergrad, you're not just doing a bunch of busy work that doesn't matter, or reading a bunch of rando articles or journals or books that aren't important. In reality, if you are in a well-established field and you are taking classes that are really talking about the major concepts, the major themes, and the major scholars within your discipline, then you are 100% reading the leading scholars or the canonical scholars that are in your field of study. And what this means is, these are the foundational people that are most important to your discipline or to your department. And so when you get into grad school, those people don't just disappear. They don't just stop being important. They are still fundamentally the foundation of that discipline or of that department. Now, with that said, they may be more introductory kind of examples of these leading scholars or canonical readings. And what that means is you may be expected to only read 20 pages of an 80-page article, or you may only have an excerpt or a piece of the information, and you're working with those small bits and talking about those small bits rather than the larger conversation or the larger arc of what they're saying within their theorization. Because they're introductory, that means that they are the most important, or like I said, the foundation of your department. So if you are to start a graduate program within your same discipline, it is very likely that you may be expected to take an intro course where you would have to do all of those readings again. So in that regard, the readings that you do in undergrad are the same readings in graduate school. And if you understood them or they made sense or you really enjoyed them, then that is a really good sign that you most likely will enjoy, succeed, and understand them when you go into grad school. But if they're the same readings, then why do people complain or say that grad school is just so hard? Well, the reason is the why you're reading them or the purpose of your readings change drastically. In undergrad, you're doing readings for understanding. And what this means is you're really focusing on a synthesis. You're trying to understand, what are the major points? Why are we reading this in class? Why is it important to me, to the greater world, to the other readings in this class, to our professor who has assigned this reading? And then you do some analysis to really understand, like, what is the significance, how to put this into conversation or extend this conversation to a greater discourse. In graduate school, it is a much larger conversation. You are still 100% expected to do the synthesis, the greater understanding that comes with, or those skills that you develop in undergrad. You still need to understand what the author is saying and why is it important and why are we reading this and how is it related to the larger conversation. But in graduate school, the biggest difference is the way that analysis works. So again, in undergrad, your analysis is really trying to understand the main arguments and analyze why it's important, how is it related to other things, and how to communicate to other people. In graduate school, your analysis isn't just why it's important. Your analysis will have to look at, where does it need room for improvement? Where does it make claims that aren't actually that strong or significant or help support the greater point that the author is trying to represent? You're also analyzing it against other scholars. So before you are analyzing it together, why are they speaking to each other? Why are they, how do they work together well? And sometimes you do contrast in undergrad, of course, where you're saying they're talking differently. But that basic compare and contrast looks different in graduate school. So instead of just being expected to talk about why they're different, how they're different, you're really talking about the significance of these differences and how these differences impacts greater theories or greater concepts or arguments within your field, or how it impacts your personal research. So it's less about a conversation and more about really, being critical and critiquing what is going on. Now, that doesn't mean everything you have to say has to be negative, but the crux of the difference is you are analyzing beyond just the basic information that is represented or presented. You are really expected to bring in your personal insight to analyze, to critique, to evaluate the validity, the significance, the power of what you are reading. And in some cases, you will really like it and be very positive, and in other cases, you might tear reading apart. So again, the reason that you are doing readings in graduate school is not to just understand. That is a very undergraduate expectation or purpose. In graduate school, you are pushing the field forward by looking for potholes, by presenting critiques, by presenting new opportunities or new directions that these readings, these theories, these concepts can go. So you're really bringing yourself and your idea into the readings, even if it's just, a lecture course or a seminar that you are discussing the readings. The point is not to just regurgitate, but instead to evaluate and to present new ideas and to move things forward always. So if the purpose or the reason that you are doing these writings are different, then your assessment of your command of the readings will also change. So again, in undergrad, you are expected to demonstrate that you have understanding. And a lot of the ways that that is done is through your written assignments or through your discussion. Your written assignments and your discussions are the same ways that you are being assessed in graduate school. Now, as a graduate student, you are still expected to present or demonstrate understanding of the readings. So you would still be expected to know the major concepts or ideas that are within the article. You are still expected to synthesize, to present some compare and contrast, and then obviously analyze what is going on. These are all the same skills that you developed in undergrad. The difference, or where it becomes slightly different in graduate school, is that you are really being assessed or evaluated on your ability to apply or an application of these concepts to other fields, disciplines, or major ideas. So what this means is, if you are doing a reading on a specific theory, you're not just going to regurgitate what they're saying and why it's significant, though that should be included. Once you explain what they're saying, why it's significant, and how they're explaining it, then you need to demonstrate in other spaces that it functions the same way. So an example that I could present is if you read Foucault's Discipline and Punishment, he's saying that, everybody in society are being disciplined to follow rules through these technologies or through these mechanisms, and he lists these mechanisms. Then your job as a graduate student is to think about these mechanisms and say, well, how does this apply to other realms? How does this apply to my research? So in my example, I would think, okay, if he's talking about the panopticon, which is a way that you see people all the time and makes them feel like they're being surveillance all the time, and I apply that to museums, well, museums are big open spaces where everybody can see each other and it's very quiet and there's all these cameras. So Foucault's ideas of the panopticon, or being able to surveil everybody or to watch everybody, and thus makes people want to follow the rules, applies to my readings or applies to my field of study, because museums are also using that technology or that mechanism that Foucault has defined to make people not touch art, or to make people whisper when they're in these spaces, or other ways that it applies. So as a graduate student, you're again not just synthesizing or understanding, you're applying your readings and pushing the field forward. Because as junior scholars and as future scholars, we're not just here to talk about what other people are doing. We want to be active contributors to the academic discourse or the academic field that we are in. And that's what we are being trained to do as graduate students. And that's why our readings are assessed in that manner. And now it's time to address the 800-pound gorilla that's in the room. Another thing that makes graduate school different is just the amount of reading you are expected to do. So like I said, in undergrad, you may be doing the introductory readings and not even the entirety of the introductory readings. But the cruel reality of graduate school is that you will probably be expected to read a lot. Some courses may expect you to read an entire book in 1 week or every week, as if you don't have 3 to 5 other courses that you have to work around or think about. And that can become very intimidating and overwhelming. Now, again, there are strategies for reading in graduate school that help make the load much more manageable. But it is the reality that one of the reasons that graduate school feels so much harder is that the reading workload becomes so much more. Now, with all that said, just because graduate school assigns so much more readings, that doesn't mean you can't be successful. It can sound really intimidating when I'm saying that, each course may assign hundreds of pages or something similar to that. But again, a ton of people go through grad school and a ton of people succeed. And some of them are just like me, slow, distracted readers, or people like me who don't like to read. And there's definitely strategies to help you succeed. So before you get overwhelmed and just write off graduate school, I do want you to know there are strategies to help you get through these readings, no matter what type of school reader you are. But it would be misleading if I didn't say that graduate school assigns way more readings, and that is something that is completely different than undergrad. Also, sometimes when you are doing readings in graduate school, a lot of the readings are written in academies or like a very dense, hard to follow written language that is to sound very scholarly or makes the author feel very smart or, that type of jazz. And just because that's the case, it doesn't mean that you can't succeed in grad school. There are usually, with those really hard, dense readings, resources online, working groups or writing groups or communities on campus that can help you, or you can always go to your faculty's office hours to help deal with those types of readings. So that is something that is hard about graduate school readings. And again, because you're doing the same readings in undergrad, it may have been hard in undergrad as well, but I did want to address it directly because for somebody who is a first generation person of color or Black Indigenous person of color that is going to graduate school, seeing that type of writing may be really uncomfortable or shocking, and you may feel like you will never understand or you will never write like that. And I have good news. Good. You shouldn't write like that. You shouldn't want to be like that as an academic, because if it's hard for you, it's probably going to be hard for the people in the communities that you care about as well. And so there is a move within graduate school to be more accessible within the educational system, within writing, within the conversation of academia. And so while we're at this crux of this transition, I just wanted to put a little plug to remember to always be yourself. Don't feel like you have to conform or change who you are. And if it doesn't seem to work for you or to feel good or fit your understanding, it may just not be how your brain works. And that is totally reasonable and totally acceptable. And you are still a valid graduate student. You are still smart and you still can succeed. But okay, you didn't come here for a pep talk. Are graduate school readings hard? Well, yes, like always, yes. But the hardness you can definitely learn to make easier through strategies, through community, through just practice. And so again, while we are acknowledging that grad school is a really weird place that is really difficult and requires a lot of training and a lot of failure, but also a lot of success, it's important to acknowledge just because something's hard doesn't mean you can't do it. And if you want to go to grad school, you totally can. But one way to help yourself be a lot more successful in grad school is to make sure that you are informed, that you are prepared, and that you have a community to help guide you through that process. So if you're interested in more grad life, grad advice, and everything research, don't forget to subscribe. If you found at least 2 things useful in this video, hit the thumbs up. And as always, if you have questions, concerns, video ideas, or just want to say hi, please leave a comment. It makes me so happy to comment back and to have friends through the internet. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.